All right. It looks like we are live now. Hello, hello. Yes, people of the world out there, thanks for joining our stream. This is Daniel Field, the supervisor of me and my lab mates who you have just met. Uh, Daniel is a lecturer here at the University of Cambridge, Earth Sciences Department, and also a fellow of Christ's College. Um, and you are interested in pretty much all things bird, right?
Yeah, I am. Thanks, by the way, Albert, for the opportunity to participate in this. Hi, everybody.
No problem.
Yeah, I'm primarily interested in birds. It's my preferred dinosaur group. But I definitely started out with an interest in I guess what I think of now as Mesozoic stem group birds.
Right.
I'm from Alberta in Canada, where, of course, some of the most famous late Cretaceous dinosaurs come from. So that was a big inspiration for me when I was growing up. I was always very excited about dinosaur fossil finds from Alberta.
Excellent. Yeah. And you have also had the opportunity to see many of the modern birds that are around today, as well as their fossils. Yeah, I believe. What are you at? Like over 3,400 species of living birds?
Oh yeah, well you're pretty much bang on. Yeah, somewhere between 3,400 and 3,500. It varies a bit depending on your taxonomy.
Right.
But, yeah, so I've been pretty obsessed with living birds since I was about 9 or 10 years old. I became very interested from just seeing birds in my backyard back in Canada, one of the places with the most depauperate avifaunas on the planet.
True.
So I was grateful for anything I could see growing up. But yeah, I guess as time went on, I sort of came to realize that this interest in dinosaurs from the Cretaceous,
Yeah.
and this interest in birds in my backyard, they were linked.
Yeah.
And gradually, I guess through an interest in learning more about evolutionary biology and paleontology, those links became clearer and clearer to me. And really, that's sort of manifested in what I do now. I'm very interested in trying to use fossils, both relatively recent fossils of what you might think of as major modern bird groups, and much more ancient fossils of things that are more distantly related to living birds, in order to try to piece together how those various biological specializations that we think of as bird-like came to be, and also how those major groups of living birds that we can see in backyards around the world arose. And so those are sort of the major goals of the research that I do.
Right. Yeah. So if anybody has questions about bird evolution or bird paleontology, please do send them in, preferably with a donation, but we'll try to get to those that are not accompanied by no donations as well. Right. So, I guess to start off, this might be a hard question, but what is your favorite bird that you've seen or photographed? Because you've also photographed a lot of them. You have a very extensive Flickr account.
That's what I was doing this afternoon. I went down, there's some chalk pits just outside of Cambridge, and realized there was a peregrine falcon nest there.
Wow.
So that's what I was doing this afternoon, photographing some peregrine falcons. It was cool. As soon as I got there, this giant female peregrine flew in with a wood pigeon,
Wow.
which, for anybody who doesn't live in Europe, is this massive, very unintelligent pigeon that we have around here. And so it brings in this wood pigeon in its talons and flies it in. There are a couple of near fledging falcons in the nest that sort of went to town on the carcass. It was pretty cool. So anyway, yeah, I like to photograph birds. I've photographed several thousand species of birds, and a goal of mine is to acquire basically good photographs of all of the major groups of living birds. You can sort of think of them at the family level.
Right.
There are over 200 families of living birds today, and I like to use those images in my own research. I like to use those images in my talks, and I like to make those images available for anybody who requires good images of bird groups from around the world for talks that they're giving or papers that they're writing. So anybody out there who needs photographs of birds can get in touch with me.
Yes.
But anyway, what's my favorite bird? I really like um, things that are unusual, that sort of show sort of unique, um, unique divergences in forms and lifestyles from their close relatives. So probably my favorite bird is the secretary bird. This thing, Sagittarius serpentarius, a long-legged, predominantly ground-dwelling raptor from Africa that specializes on eating snakes. I've been lucky enough to see secretary birds in the wild several times, and they're really spectacular. They're enormous. They're really graceful yet powerful, and they're like no other raptor in the world, standing on stilts the way they do. That's a really, really special one. There's another African bird that I'm very fond of called the shoebill, Baleniceps rex. It used to be called the whale-billed stork. Totally unique in its appearance. It always looks like it's sort of smirking.
Yes.
It's a very strange-looking beast. But in general, my favorite group of birds, there's sort of a bias towards African birds here, I guess. There's some fantastic bird groups endemic to Africa. There's a group called the turacos, which Albert knows that I love. Predominantly very brightly colored, very charismatic looking birds, some of whom have big crests on their head, kind of like I do. And, some of them have unique pigments in their feathers that make them, beautiful greens and pinks. They're just incredibly beautiful, incredibly charismatic birds. They eat fruit, so, vegetarians won't get angry at them. And I think that's another great group.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's in the name Musophaga, which is a banana eater.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like the cutest Latin name too. It's fantastic. It's a win all around for turacos. Yeah, but the truth is, it is a tough question to answer because I like them all. I spend a lot of time in the field observing birds, and I'm just fascinated by how even common birds that we see every day have arisen. So that's
I definitely know that feeling. Do you have a favorite turaco or shoebill or secretary bird picture you could share with us?
Yeah, sure. So I share my screen?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, all right. I can do that. Start sharing. Can you see my screen?
I can see your screen right now, yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's go over to Flickr. The nice thing about this sort of like online photo repository is it's easy to search.
Right.
If it loads. So anyway, here are the bird pictures. They're sort of seems disorganized, but you can search for Coryphaeolas, the genus of my favorite
that's a good one.
Turco, and here it is, this enormous blue, incredibly stunning bird from Africa, just an absolutely gorgeous bird. So I saw this bird in the botanical garden in Entebbe in Uganda.
Wow.
Just an absolutely stunning bird. And let's see here. You can look for some other turacos to give you a sense of the disparity. So this genus here, Tauraco, is characterized by these incredibly stunning bright green birds.
Which are unique pigment to them, right?
That's right, yes. So the green color is produced by a pigment called Turacoverdin. Interestingly, so this pigment here that makes these feathers this beautiful magenta color is, I think, the first avian pigment that was ever characterized. I might have that wrong. It might be even more dramatic than that. It might be the first pigment that was ever chemically characterized. So this is like back in the mid-19th century. People took feathers from these turacos that have the magenta flight feathers and placed those feathers in a glass of water, and the pigment, terracin, is water soluble. And so the pigment leached out into the water, which made it, I guess, amenable to, thorough characterization. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's kind of a crazy story in the study of like pigmentation at all.
Right.
I think terracin was the first pigment that was really well understood. So anyway, you can just see how, totally charming and beautiful these birds are. They're right up there. What else were we talking? We were talking about shoebill, right?
Yeah, shoebill, yeah.
Yeah.
Very good, very nice shoebill. picture.
Oh
It
yeah,
has been on the cover of a journal before.
that's right. Yeah, that's right. This photograph was on the cover of Systematic Biology, which is like my favorite journal. It's a journal focused on phylogenetics research. So there's a lot of theoretical research that gets published in that journal, sort of new and better ways to infer phylogenetic trees, family trees for different groups of organisms, and also sort of more applied phylogenetic research. And so the paper that we published in there was looking at a number of things. The main point of the paper was trying to get a better understanding of what happened to birds at the end of the age of dinosaurs, when the asteroid struck the Earth and all non-avian dinosaurs went extinct, and only crown group birds, modern birds, made it through that extinction event. How did they do it? And we presented some evidence to suggest that the surviving lineages of birds were all quite small-bodied. That's consistent with something that you see after many mass extinction events. It's difficult to get enough to eat if you're a really large-bodied creature. So we think only small birds made it through. And that's interesting because small body size is correlated with lots of other interesting biological variables, including the rate at which DNA sequences evolve.
Right.
So we think that because smaller bodied birds exhibit higher rates of genomic substitution than large bodied birds do, a filter where for a period of time you only had small bodied birds around would be expected to induce sort of a pulse of rapid genome changes in the aftermath of this asteroid impact. And we think that this elevated rate of genomic evolution may in some ways be linked to the incredibly rapid pace of bird evolution that we infer to have taken place at that point in Earth history. So the shoebill was kind of the poster child for that story.
Right. As a very large bird itself.
It's a very large and very goofy bird. This is
Right.
looks like it's always smirking.
It does. That is
Oh yeah.
such an amazing bird. Yeah, I was telling Lizzie earlier that I've never been to the neotropics, but I've also never been to Africa, and you know those two places have a bunch of cool birds.
That's totally true.
But yes, so yeah, actually talking about the paper actually is a nice segue, because I wanted to ask, like, you know, what's some really exciting research projects you've been doing recently besides overseeing our work?
Well, so everybody, I guess, from the lab will have spoken by now, right?
Pretty much. Well, the ones who agreed to join, yep.
Right. Well, that's great. So people out there who've been paying attention will know that people in the research group here at Cambridge are interested in all aspects of bird evolution. So Albert has been doing some fantastic work looking at the anatomy and evolution of major living bird groups. Juan, who I think you heard about, is very interested in the anatomy and evolution of the close non-crown group relatives of crown group birds. And Lizzie and Clara, I believe you also heard from as well.
Yes.
Yep. So they're both doing really cool research into two of the most interesting living groups of birds, those being the passerines, the most diverse kind of subclade of living birds in the world. And Clara is doing this fantastic work looking at aspects of the evolution of flightlessness in large-bodied paleognath birds by gaining a better understanding of the anatomy of their small-bodied flying relatives. So, altogether, that spans sort of a huge cross-section of macroevolutionary research in birds. And I guess what I'm primarily interested in is the transition from pre-modern to modern. How did we move from a world that was dominated by stem group birds to a world that was dominated by crown group birds? And the more work we do on the subject, the more it becomes very clear that this end Cretaceous mass extinction event, this asteroid-induced global calamity, is sort of the singularity that defines this transition from a world dominated by stem birds to a world dominated by crown birds. So the work that I'm most excited about right now digs more deeply into that link. So this body size work that I just mentioned was a part of that. We did some work in the last couple of years looking at the influence of habitat destruction in the aftermath of the asteroid impact on bird evolution. where we suggested that the devastation of forests around the world, which is documented by the paleobotanical fossil record of plants, probably structured major aspects of the early evolutionary history of modern birds after the asteroid impact. And just this past year, I don't know if this has been mentioned yet, Albert, we published what is and probably the most exciting work that I think has come out of the lab so far.
Yeah, I'll mention it a bit, but
okay, cool. So the oldest crown bird fossil known so far. So this is a fossil that, as I'm sure Juan would have mentioned, we've named Esterionis maastrichtensis. And it was a small-bodied bird that seems to be quite closely related to the group that unites chicken-like birds and duck-like birds. Mm-hmm. And that fossil was really interesting because it's just from slightly before the point in time when the asteroid struck, from a few 100,000 years before the asteroid struck. So geologically, it's kind of a blink of an eye. Right. And it provides us with the clearest information we've had so far of what crown group birds were like at the very end of the age of dinosaurs. And the fact that it's quite small-bodied and the fact that it seems to be a ground-dwelling bird both corroborate some of those ideas that we had inferred on the basis of independent evidence, right, suggesting that predominantly ground-dwelling, small-bodied birds would have been the lineages most likely to have survived that mass extinction event. So, of course, we're all interested in fossils. Paleontology has sort of a unique contribution to make to the study of evolution in that it provides us with the only direct evidence we'll ever find to shed light on these evolutionary transitions that happened a long time ago. So having this new information in the form of Esterionis is fantastic because it gives us some more confidence in those inferential conclusions about the early evolutionary history of modern birds than we ever could have had previously. So that was a very exciting find. Albert and Juan both contributed hugely to that project. And it was such a fun experience working alongside both of them. And I really look forward, to similar experiences working with other graduate students that come through the research group here, sure, trying to tell some of these big evolutionary stories.
Excellent. Yeah. Let me check if there are any questions coming in. So far, I haven't seen any reports from my colleagues yet.
Okay. But I'll scroll through some bird photos.
Yeah, no, go by all means.
There's a primate interloper.
Oh. Yeah, because we've been streaming by this point for over 24 hours, I think. So I think a lot of people are pretty tapped out. But I'm sure they're all sure, they're all enjoying the talks. I'm sure. Cool. Yeah. Just amazing diversity. Yep, that's the Tinamou picture that Clara used in her
Yeah, exactly. Oh, did she show this in her presentation?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so this is the same genus that she's been spending the last year with. Yep. Different species. This is the same species, but it's not smiling in quite the same way.
Right.
Sort of walking away. So this is what an Andean Tinamou looks like with its clothes on. Yeah. So, if anybody's interested in learning a little bit more about Esterionis, I do have a couple of slides here. Yeah, I'm not sure how much detail Juan went into.
He talked a bit about the discovery and some of the significance of it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we have a bit of time, so yeah, you can show us a few slides if you like.
Well, sure. I'll just give everybody a look at how unspectacular the fossil looked at first. I'm sure Juan would have mentioned we really had no idea what we were dealing with initially. There's just this sort of very small piece of limestone with a couple of bones poking out, but the bones are not well preserved. So there's a femur there. There's a fish bone, and then if you turn it upside down, you can see part of the shin bone, the tibiotarsus of a bird, but they're broken, so it was difficult to say very much about them. But then this slide here just gives you a sense of how old the specimen is from the very last few 100,000 years of the Cretaceous before the asteroid struck. But we decided to take that specimen and pop it in a CT scanner There's a picture of me pretending to look at it, but this is a different specimen. In order to look inside the rock, the CT scanning technology allows you to peer inside the rock to see what bones are present inside. So we had somebody come by and film sort of a replay of what Juan and I found when we sort of digitally removed the rock. And when we did that, this is totally inaccurate because Juan and I were like screaming and swearing and giving each other high fives.
Right.
But this was just such an exciting moment for us when we realized we had a beautifully preserved skull inside this block. And, this is the only modern bird skull of its age known so far. And it, just was extremely exciting for us. So you can get a sense of how nicely preserved that skull is here.
Yeah.
Albert made this beautiful animation of the skull spinning around in space. So you can kind of get a sense of its anatomy in high resolution and in 3 dimensions. So this allowed us to document similarities and differences with major groups of living birds. The anterior part of the face, basically the beak and the nostril region, are very, very similar to what you see in a lot of living birds. Living chicken-like birds have got the skull of a turkey. You can't see it. I'm holding it up.
Right. Yeah.
We see it in
a little icon up there. Yeah.
Oh, you can? Okay. Well, anyway, here it is. The face is very similar in terms of how it's put together and what the bones look like to what we see in living turkeys. But the back of the skull is more similar to what we see in living duck-like birds. So altogether, it is a strange combination of features that we had never previously seen.
Right.
And anyway, here are a couple of photographs of living chicken-like birds and duck-like birds. And the point, I guess, from a phylogenetic perspective, is that the fossil seems to, it's labeled Wonder Chicken here.
That's our nickname for it, yep.
Exactly. So I just gave a talk for the National College in Mexico. So we were calling it the Pollo Magnifico. But anyway, it's got many names. Properly, it's Esterionis, but we think that is very, very close to the last common ancestor of living chicken-like birds and duck-like birds, which places it quite firmly very, very deep in the living bird family tree.
Right.
So this red branch here is that common branch that leads to the ancestral divergence between chicken-like birds and duck-like birds. So we think that it sort of slots into the family tree right there. And that's pretty neat because that is one of the few branches of living bird diversity that we think already existed when the asteroid struck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's Esterionis is incredible. Like obviously I'm biased, but it certainly fits in very well with a lot of what we've been predicting about kind of modern bird evolution and diversity in the latest Cretaceous.
Yeah, I agree with you, Albert. So it's funny. Paleontologists like to play this game where you sort of say, if we could discover any fossil, what would it be and why?
Right.
And for me, and I think probably for you too, at the time that we found this fossil, we would have said evidence of crown group birds from the late Cretaceous to get a better understanding of what birds were actually like at that point in Earth history. So, when Juan and I realized what we actually had on the computer screen in the CT lab here at Cambridge, we just, there was years of anticipation behind it for both of us. It was really exciting. So just in case we're wrapping up here, I'd like to show this beautiful illustration by Philip Krzyminski, who is an American paleo artist and bird illustrator. You can see he got to kind of bridge his skill set painting living birds and paleo landscapes in this artwork he did for us, where he kind of managed to synthesize all of the best information we could infer about what the biology of Esterionis would have actually been like, and combined it with some intelligent and speculative inferences about what this animal might have looked like. And this is what he came up with, and I think it's fantastic. In its proportions, it sort of looks a little bit like a rail or a little bit like a strange shorebird.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the proportions and the lifestyle are inferred on the basis of the fossil limb bones, the leg bones that were preserved, as well as the paleo environment that the fossil came from. It was found in sort of rocks laid down very close to shore in a shallow tropical type sea in what is now Western Europe. Those rocks cover parts of the Netherlands and Belgium today.
Right.
So yeah, it was a very exciting find for us, and we're still doing a lot of work to understand various aspects of Esterionis' biology a little bit better.
Right. Well, that sounds like a good place to leave off, I think. We're coming up
Sure.
on the hour.
Well,
Thank you
thanks,
so
Albert.
much.
I'll end with this.
Oh, yes. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yep,
So
one
thanks again
representative.
for the invitation to participate, Albert.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yes, thanks for joining us.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, well, I will turn this off shortly.
Okay.
Yep.
The fossil Esterionis. I apologize, this URL is extremely cumbersome, but we do have an online museum exhibit up, which you can visit to learn more about the evolutionary context and details of Esterionis.
Sounds good. Yeah, it's an excellent online exhibit, so check it out if you are interested. Alrighty, so now I will turn the stream off, actually.